Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm your host, Anne Remy. I'm a counseling psychotherapist, yoga teacher, and trauma specialist living in Brighton, UK. On this show, we interview folks in a variety of healing professions, and we discuss the intersectional journey of healing self while caring for others.
But we're not just focused on individual healing, but also healing on the collective level, from white supremacy, late-stage capitalism, and the patriarchy. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Anne.
How you doing?
It's so hard to answer that question anymore. Mentally, I'm scattered. Physically, I'm exhausted. Spiritually, quite connected. Emotionally, pretty good considering. So, life is lifin'.
There's a song called Life is Life. It's very repetitive, and that's the whole lyrics to it. So, fun fact for everybody.
Good to know. How are you?
Yeah. My brain is not braining well either, because the day we're recording this, I'm still sick.
Right.
So my brain is just not braining. And I can feel my sinuses pushing into my teeth, which is weird. Don't think it's that gross. I just think it's a funny thing that faces do.
No, I'm weird with internal stuff. Like when I was younger, I got so icked out by the word blood. We called it B growing up because I could not because I can really envision, I was seeing, I'm going to interview her soon, so everybody will meet her, but this woman I've been seeing for lymphatic drainage massage, and she started talking about your brain, cleaning itself. And I was like, I could throw up right now just thinking about it. It's just something about whatever happens inside of me. I want it to stay there and not reveal itself to me in any way. I don't want to know.
Oh my God. I want to interpret that so badly. This would be a whole therapy session. This is not it. This is not a podcast intro. Everything you just said to me is as a somatic therapist, I'm like, oh, this tracks. This makes sense to me.
All right.
So
for a later date,
another conversation.
Good to know.
For a later date. Yeah. What do you think of my conversation with Carolynn?
I found her so delightful.
She's so delightful.
So delightful. But not delightful in a only murders in the building way. In a way, I really want her to be my friend, and I want to hang out with her on her lazy Sundays.
But that's the vibe she gives.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody meeting her and going, no, she's not for me.
No, that would be their problem. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really want for you to be able to visit her bookstore, because as she kind of talks about in the episode, it really is just, it's a really special space.
I imagine. There were so many things in your conversation that reminded me a lot of conversations that I have with my dear friend, Mashara Winston, who is the only person we've interviewed twice on the podcast thus far, in the way that, the receipt thing, I'm not going to spoil it for people, but she talks about a situation with receipts and people of color. It's one of those Band-Aid moments that you're like, oh yeah, Band-Aids are for white people. That's just of course I never would have thought of that. And she's just so thoughtful and caring and expansive. I don't know, everything about her, A+.
A+. I knew you would like her. And her mission, to me, is just so obvious. And all of her sort of side quests that kind of branch off of this bookstore that she owns, they're changing the community of Brighton. And you start to see a lot more visibility for people of color in a really not diverse town. And I think I say in the episode, I send my clients there.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's a safe space to send them to, the feeling I get is so warm. Yeah, it's just really warm about her, about that bookstore. And I'm just really happy to be able to share this conversation with everybody.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm just going to leave it there and introduce you to Carolynn Bain. Carolynn Bain is an entrepreneur, speaker, event manager, and owner of Afrori Books. She started in 2020, a store that specializes in books by Black authors which has taken Brighton by storm. She has a passion to see diversity in a city she loves dearly and to change the narrative for many Black and brown children. Please enjoy my conversation with Carolynn.
Woohoo! Are you a therapist stepping into a leadership role for the first time? Or maybe you've been in a leadership position for a while, but you're bumping up against new struggles. It's a transformative journey and one that can be deeply rewarding, but also filled with unique challenges. Many therapists find themselves in leadership positions because of their exceptional therapeutic skills. Yet leading, supervising, or managing others requires a whole new set of competencies not typically covered in graduate school. Our Authentic Leaders group is here to help you become the authentic and wholehearted leader you aspire to be. We believe that the journey is best undertaken with the guidance of experienced mentors alongside fellow learners. The next cohort of Authentic Leaders will run November 2024 through June 2025, meeting once monthly on Fridays for 90 minutes. We'll also have some additional opportunities for connection and support along the way. Join me in this journey of self-discovery and leadership mastery, where you'll enhance your leadership skills and forge meaningful connections with fellow therapists committed to their own growth and the betterment of the therapy field. www.headheartbiztherapy.com/authentic-leaders-group.
Carolynn Bain, welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to talk to you and to share your work with our audience today, but I'm wondering if you can kind of introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
So I am definitely Carolynn Bain, so that's always a good start, isn't it? Not someone else on the wrong show. I am the founder or director or manager or owner, whatever takes your fancy, of Afrori Books. And Afrori Books is a bookshop based in Brighton that specialises in books by Black authors.
And if I remember correctly, you're the only bookshop in Brighton that's Black owned and specializes in authors of color. Is that right?
Yeah, we're pretty sure that we're actually the only one in the country. We have yet to find another one. So there are a couple of bookshops that are Black owned, that are specialised in diverse books, which is amazing, and they do incredible work. But as it stands at the point of recording, we're the only one in the country.
Oh, I feel really bummed out to hear that, actually, because I thought there were some in London at least.
No, some of my great friends, booksellers, we're a real pack. We we appear like lonely, sad figures, but we do hunt in packs. So one of my friends called Mira runs a diverse bookshop in Brixton. Mm-hmm. There's another one in Kent, in Sevenoaks, run by Fleur. There's one up in Leeds, run by Linda. And there are a couple of pop-ups. So one run by Sam, one run by Ruby. But they are all diverse bookshops. There is a new bookshop that's open in Peckham in South London, but they appear to be diverse as well.
So since you're pioneering it, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided that you were going to do this and how you got here?
Yeah, basically I got mad. Afrori Books is born out of frustration. You know, my children grew up not being able to easily access books where there was true representation. And by true representation, what I mean is that it's not enough to just change the pencil colour and colour in a white featured person brown. That's not representation. It's not enough to even draw a Black character, but actually there's nothing in their lifestyle that shows the culture that they come from. That's not true representation. So my children grew up just with us just struggling to find books like that for them. And then we got to 2020 and George Floyd was murdered and we were on a march and I was just like, what are we doing? Why am I marching with my kids? My kids are grown-ups now. So it's like I went on my first march when I was 9 years old and my first anti-racist march. And, you know, here I am 40 plus years later doing it all over again. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. And I love books and I love literature and friends were calling me and saying, oh, where can I find this book? How do I, find the right reading and change kind of my understanding or gain more understanding? And I just thought, this is silly because, my experience was that you go to your traditional bookshop and, at the back of the back, through the tunnel of doom and down in the cellar, they proudly show you, here's our black selection. And it's like 7 books on a dusty shelf. And I just thought, this isn't it, because I knew there were more books out there. We had imported books from around the world just to try and get some diversity for our children, some representation. So I knew they were out there, and I just thought, well, can I make this easier? What if I just made a bookshop that was like the one-stop shop? But also, what if I platformed Black authors? And that was really the bigger thing for me. It was never about sales. I really didn't think that I would sell. I didn't think I'd sell enough books to give up my day job. To be fair, I don't sell enough books to give up my day job. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Yeah, I thought this would be something that I would just, have to do on the side. I didn't realize how time consuming it was going to be. But I just felt that, Black people's voices weren't heard. And I thought that Black authors and Black writers had these incredible stories. They spoke so well, they articulated what most of us cannot. And so I just thought, okay, what if I, build a social media and marketing platforms and really just promote their voices? Yeah, so Afrori Books was born, and we started off, and we've held on to it tightly with a 3-point mission plan, which is support Black authors, create diverse bookshelves, be a voice against injustice. And everything we do has to sit in that pocket. If it doesn't sit there, then we just don't do it.
And I think having those 3 key pillars must help keep you kind of on the path, because you don't just sell books. There's so much other stuff that you're doing with it. Yeah. And it's become such a, and maybe you can talk about some of the other projects that you have run and continue to run, because there is so much that you do that you can hear falls squarely within those 3 principles.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, unless I write it down in front of me, which I haven't, I actually usually can't remember all the stuff that we do. So we run lots of workshops. The things I guess I'm most proud of are often the things that, in all honesty, cripple me financially. So the Hair Education Workshop is just phenomenal. And we gather in parents, carers, and the children that are around them and just teach them how to look after curly and textured hair. And you just can't begin to imagine, what it is like to have hair that is the subject of ridicule, anxiety, just constantly. And I grew up with, my hair described as, awful, terrible, out of control, unworldly. And for about 2 years, my nickname in my family, so with aunts, uncles, parents, was the Wild Woman of Wongo because of my hair. That is agonizing, because when you hit your teen years, you hate your hair. The thing you cannot change about yourself, really, the thing that defines so much of who we are, is such an incredible way to, express our creativity and our culture and all of those things. And to have it just constantly, even just in your own head, seem and be called unmanageable, it's just awful. And so, the Hair Education Workshop started because a little girl came into the shop and her hair it was terrible. It's actually the worst I've ever seen. It really was matted to her head. And she was a mixed race girl. She had a white mum, and her mum was with her. And I looked, and I actually gasped quietly at this child's hair. And she was about 7. She was 7 or 8. And I thought, oh, how do I say something? I need to say something. How do I help this mum? And then the mum picked, I thought, you can't go up to someone in your bookshop and go, hey, your kid's hair, But then she picked up this book about hair, because this child had this one plastic clip of a little bow in their head. And that's what broke my heart, because this child wanted to do something with her hair. She wanted her hair to be beautiful. And Mum picked up this book, and the book was about hairstyles for Black children. And I said, oh, are you interested in hair? And the mum started crying. And I was devastated. It hurt my heart. I can't even tell you how much it hurt my heart. And she was just, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
Oh.
I don't know how to look after it. I took her to a hairdresser and, they just pulled it really tight into plaits and it made her really fearful and she doesn't want to go back to her hairdressers again. And I just looked at her. Anyone who knows me knows this is my way. And I apologized to my family profusely. And I went, I'll fix this for you. I didn't know how I was going to fix it. I had no idea. But I did. I phoned around and I found a woman in London that ran workshops around hair. And we paid her a fortune to come down to Brighton and run a hair workshop. And I kid you not, we had 17 children, because we can't take a lot of kids anyway. So 17 children and their adults came in, and all of the children, bar one, walked in staring at their feet, just looking miserable. And every single child came out laughing, just going, look at me. And it was incredible. But the little girl who, was the catalyst for it, she came out, her hair looked pretty much the same, but at the back, there were these 3 little tiny twists. And the hair expert said to me as well, it's the worst I've ever seen. And she said, I can't help her fix it in a day, but I think I've given the mum the tools to fix it and the daughter the confidence to be a part of that process. And the little girl came back in. She just looked like a different child. Her hair were in these incredible twists. And she said to me, Carolyn, look at my hair. And I was like, I'm looking, it's amazing. And she said, even the head teacher of my school came up to me and said, your hair looks beautiful.
Wow.
And it blew me away. And I actually haven't seen, I saw her, she was fairly regular in the shop. I haven't seen her for about a year and a half. The bookshop was at Carnival on Saturday. And she came over to me and she's now this 12-year-old girl, preteen in secondary school, tall, confident, so self-assured. And I was just like, come on. So for me, it makes terrible business sense. That's the honest truth. But I literally went home that night and I said to my husband, if we close down tomorrow, I don't mind. It's worth it. We did that. We did that. So yeah, we run, longest answer ever. We run workshops.
No.
We run workshops. Our hair education workshop, like you see, I can hear is quite important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because I think it's on my mind a little bit as well, because we are running one in October and our special guest there is Lenny Henry, who is Knight Sir Lenny Henry. He is actor, author, just pioneer, I guess, in Black television. And because he's written a book about children's hair. And we're in our first full partnership. So we've done lots of things with them, but in our first full partnership with Lush, the big product cosmetics brand. And the reason being for that is that there's a woman called Sarah Sango who has created a hair range for Lush that is for Black and textured hair. But Sarah didn't just create a hair range. What she did is she said to Lush, in order for you to have this hair range, I need to ensure that everybody applies it correctly. So she goes around and trains Lush staff in all of the Lushes across the country to ensure, and this gets my heart again, that they never use words like unmanageable, wild, tamed. They don't use that language. And I love the work that Lush does. I love that they have fully embraced this. This product is not in the Black area. It is there available for everybody, because hair discrimination, and this is the other thing, it impacts everyone, because white women who have frizzy hair are told that it's ugly. And that literally comes because of its association with Blackness. And that is wild. That is wild. Unless you tame your curls, they're unacceptable. But everybody knows that straight hair is more beautiful. And it's trash, So we're all impacted. And Sarah recognized this and wanted actually not just Black people, but people with curly and textured hair to feel and know and be able to love their hair. And I just love that. So Sarah is coming along and she's actually running the workshop alongside Lenny Henry. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm very excited about it.
A friend of mine is an anti-racist architect, and he's been on the podcast. And when I met him, he said, I do anti-racist architecture. And I said, I don't know how architecture is racist. And I'm really excited to hear that from you. But it's one of those things where you're like, it's everywhere. And, when you were just describing discrimination against people of color and their hair, but I never thought about how that then translates into white people. And it just seeps into everywhere.
Absolutely.
Through your enthusiasm, I'm just like, oh, yes. And I think that that's one of the things that when your shop opened and I came in the first time, I was like, oh, duh. This should have existed ages ago.
Yeah.
I think that everything that I've seen your shop do, all of the workshops and the events that you run, when you say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to fix it.
Yeah.
That sort of spirit, I think, comes through in the physical space that you have, in the person that you are. And I'm wondering where that comes from in you.
Oh, I think a combination of things. I was a neglected and abandoned child. And so I somebody asked me this yesterday, and I said to them, when you're going to go one of two ways when you grow up with negativity around you all the time. You're either going to go, this must be true, or you're just going to go, oh, I'll fight this to the death. And so I definitely am I'll fight this to the death kind of person. Because I think from quite young, I realized that, if no one else was going to say I was wonderful, maybe I should just say it myself. And so I kind of have been a bit like that. But then I would say my faith is really important to me. So I'm a Christian. And I think that my faith has just really dug into me and brought out a compassion. I think that my faith has made my compassion a passion. That's how I'd say it. I think that it's drawn it and made it that actually, because I think prior to becoming a Christian, I was very much like, well, this is just me. And this is just me kind of doing this. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a weirdo for wanting to do this stuff or wanting to be like this. And then actually, I think that since becoming a Christian, and that's been like 30 years now, that I have been like, actually, no, this is not just me. This is the order of things. This is, God's intention for human beings in the world, that we should be passionate and care. And, the old love your neighbor as you love yourself. And it's like, actually, would I do this to myself? No. Would I have this expectation of myself? What would I want? And I think so growing up as an abandoned and neglected child, I look and I think, what would I have wanted as a child? What would have been game changers for me? And actually, most of those game changers are not enormous things. They're not, I would love a holiday, but they're not the big things. It is like someone just saying, you look pretty today. Just, there's simple things. And that carries all the way through. And so, I have 2 grown-up daughters. And so that's like a prime example that my daughters would be walking down the road and they go, Mum, look at that lady's dress. It's so nice. I go, don't tell me. And they go, oh, Mum. I go, don't tell me. And then they would go to the lady and say, excuse me, your dress is pretty. Because it's great you're telling me, but I don't know if she needs to hear that. So let's tell her.
Yeah.
Let's just tell her. And so even now, I laugh. One of my daughters has moved to London. She said, Mum, you've made me into a weirdo. I go around people in London going, you look great. And they look at me like, what?
This was one of my hardest cultural adjustments moving to the UK is I am an excessive compliment giver.
Yeah.
And if I see someone in the street, I'm going to tell them, I love your dress. And
absolutely.
London does not welcome that.
No.
So I feel,
but that's okay, because actually, I think that that's the thing is that, passionate and compassionate people, we need to be contagious. We need to be contagious. And so I often say to people would say to me, oh, what do you do? Or I'll be at a talk and I'll talk about some of the things that we do. And like you said, the bookshop does a lot. And a lot of that falls on my shoulders because we are a team of 3, so it's literally me and my 2 daughters, both of whom work part-time. And so we do all these things. But often when I do talks and I do public speaking, I'll say to people, I'm not a superhero. I am not, so I'll meet someone at a party and they'll say, what do you do? And I say, I'm changing the world. And they go, what? Then they have to, they can't help themselves. They've got to then go, How? And so I tell them about the work we do. And then I'll say, so I am changing the world, as you can see, but I'm not a superhero. I'm just a normal person, which means if I can, so can you. And I say it not because I want people to go, whoa, look at Carolynn, but because I want people to think about, what could I be doing? Because we can all, even if all you do every day is go out of your way to give someone a compliment, that is enough. That is enough. You know, I had a friend who told me this story once, and he said that he was running down the stairs through London, running along the tube, and he saw there was a guy sweeping the stairs, and he went to run past him because he thought he was going to miss his train, and something made him pause, and he said, he just paused as he ran the stairs, and he just tapped the guy on the shoulder. He said, hey, great job. Thank you. Appreciate what you do. And then he actually caught his train and jumped on his train. A few days later, he meets this guy again, just in a big public forum. It was like a talk of some sort. I can't remember what it was. And the guy comes over to him. He doesn't recognize him. He said, hey, I was sweeping the stairs the other day. And the guy's like, right. He said, and you? He said, I won't forget your face. You patted him on the shoulder and said, good job, thank you. And the guy was like, oh, okay. And he said, no, not okay. He said, I was going to kill myself. I was sweeping the stairs thinking, when I get to the bottom step, I'm just going to go and throw myself onto the train track. He said, I didn't. Now, that guy, I could tell 100 million people that they look pretty today. None of them might be suicidal. But what if one is? What if one person is thinking, I'm just going to jack it all in? What if even one person is thinking, I'm going to punch the next person that comes past me because I'm so angry with life? There's so many what ifs. It doesn't cost me anything. It doesn't cost me anything to dig into my heart and my passion for people.
And I think sometimes we forget that it doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah.
I like to lead with curiosity because you never know, right? You never know what someone's dealing with. You don't know someone's story. And I think that for me is what allows me to connect with people, right? When you're coming to somebody with that curiosity or that openness to chat or to compliment, what you're going to get back will massively compensate for any energy that you expend. And I'm curious because you've said some of the stuff that I do does not make good business sense. And so from a money perspective, from a business perspective, it sounds quite draining. And I can imagine even from an energy perspective, a lot of this falls on your shoulders. And yet every time I've seen you, you are a beacon of sunshine. And if people could see you right now, they could see just the smile on your, seriously. I wonder where that balance of paying out versus feeling repaid or feeling re-energized, that sort of energy currency, how that works for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say two things. One, this is slightly easier for me because I'm an extrovert. And so if you're an introvert, this costs you much more. And I recognize that 100%. And so I'm not in any way suggesting that everybody be Carolynn, because please, introverts, keep being introverts. We need introverts. We do so desperately. So, I am energized by people. So there is something in that. I think that not enough people in the world get to tell their story. And so love hearing people's stories. I love being in the bookshop and just asking a few questions and just people getting to tell me their stories. And people tell you all kinds of things in the bookshop. I mean, literally, we are part bookshop, part therapists. So I think that's one part. I think the other part is that I am really strict about when I am off. And I know my daughters, if they're listening to this, will be going, no, she's not. They complain constantly. So I work really long hours. I do. And I'll accept that. I average a 60-hour week. But I do not work on Sundays. I just don't. My rule for Sundays for the past 2 years, I wish I could say that I've always been like this. I have not. For the past 2 years, my rule is on Sundays, I only do what brings me joy.
Ooh.
And it's just so simple. And actually, all of my family are used to that now. My husband is an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't work the weekends. He works a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, normal job. So he gets to do Saturdays when I'm in the shop, and he just does his sit in a dark place thing that makes him happy. But on Saturday nights, he will say, what are we doing tomorrow? And sometimes I'll say, oh, I don't know what you're doing. I'm lying on the hammock all day, you know, or, oh, actually, I'm going for a cycle ride and I'm doing this and this, you know. So I just decide. So some Sundays I love cooking. I might cook all day. And other Sundays I'm like, somebody better cook me some dinner because otherwise I know what's going to happen, you know. So I'm really strict about that. And I think having sat in that rhythm for the last 2 years, the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple of, since May, we've had a really hard time We've had a personal death in the family, and then we have the book festival. We've had a new baby being born, you know, and the death in the family has really kind of thrown upside down what our lives look like in lots of ways. And so I've had these long patches where actually across May and June, I probably lost 4 of my Sundays. And because my body's in that rhythm, I felt it really quickly. Really quickly. It's like, oh, hold on. So I might lose a Sunday. For example, one of the Sundays we went to Love Supreme, the jazz festival, but actually it was still a loss for me because I didn't control what my Sunday looked like. And that's what's quite key for me. And that would have been fine if the Sunday before hadn't been so exhausting. So I had 3 Sundays in a row where it's like, oh, I'm not controlling this Sunday. I'm not deciding what this looks like. My rhythm gets lost and I find myself feeling really depleted and struggling and thinking, where's my capacity? How comes I can't? You know, and my decision, everything, it's affected everything. My decision-making process, all of those things are impacted because this has become the rhythm that I dance to.
Yeah. You know, self-care is so important. And I am really glad that you're kind of highlighting what you do to take care of yourself. And we all do it differently, but I think we don't talk about it enough.
Absolutely.
And I think with extroverts, it's kind of easy to see, yeah, like she's on, she's there, she's great, she's this, because I'm an extrovert as well. And it's really easy for nobody to notice that I'm actually really burnt out, including myself. And so the more we talk about that, the more we live that, the more we can share it. And the more we just know for ourselves, yeah, I do need more rest.
Yeah, I think for women in general, you know, there is an expectation to always be on, to always perform. I think that is multiplied for Black women. There's definitely, you know, this whole narrative around strong Black women, etc. And I love Michaela Loach talks so much about soft Black women. And I love that, you know, and so I think that, again, it's trying to just change those narratives. So when I would say preach, because I really do, I evangelize about having a day of rest. When I do that, I feel like that sits in, you know, my work as being a voice against injustice, because it's not right. It's not right that women, and particularly Black women, are expected just to keep going, you know. And it's so, you know, again, it's linked back to cotton fields of just like, keep going. Because, you know, I heard someone say, you know, oh, everybody thinks that Black people are hard workers until they have to pay them, you know, and it's like, you know, oh, just keep going, keep doing it for free, you know, and the community can expect that of you and just think, well, they'll do it. Well, they'll show up to do that kind of thing. And just, yeah, this general narrative. So I think it's really important to me. And I spent probably 2 hours yesterday with one of my customers, just talking to him about rest, you know, self-employed guy, and just like, and he kept going, oh, I know, but if I just finish this thing, I'm like, and rest, you know, what does that look like? And it doesn't, you know, for me, it's this, you know, having control over my Sundays and only do what gives me joy. For someone else, it might just be Monday morning lay-in or a Saturday afternoon cycle ride, whatever it looks like for you. It's imperative, because this is flesh and blood, you know, and it's not infinite. You know, it has an end, it wears out. And as it gets older, it struggles more. And these are just facts. And so, you know, I talk to my daughters about this, you know, implementing rest and rhythms of rest from a young age, it's a beautiful thing. I wish I'd learned this 40 years ago. I really do.
I remember, I don't know if it was like a worldwide thing or just something that was popular in the US. A few years ago, around New Year's, there was a big conversation around Black folks don't get to rest enough. And so the trend was like, don't set yourself a million goals. And it was like hashtag Black people resting into whatever year it was. And that conversation really made me think quite a lot about, I guess, my own internalized racism and my own internalized views of kind of what you were saying, the strong Black woman, and how that's become such a part of our narrative that there's no social template for Black folks to be able to take a break. And some of that will be because of safety or because of, we know that Black people have to work twice as hard as white people to achieve the same thing. Yeah, so it does feel like an act of rebellion for you to take that space back for yourself.
Yeah.
And to make sure that other people are taking that space back for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, rest is activism without a shadow of doubt. And declaring as a Black woman, I will rest. It's just everywhere, within the Black community and beyond. So people saying to me, oh, what did you do on that day? And I go, nothing. And it's like, oh, there's a little bit of a bristle, because actually, if you think about, particularly, in Western culture anyway, we justify ourselves by our busyness. So someone says, oh, how was your Saturday? Oh, wow. And then you pile on all the things. I always associated pausing, resting, that equated to laziness, and laziness was horrible. I couldn't be lazy. I couldn't be seen as lazy. And so, and even now, I always think, oh, am I the hardest working person in the room? I'm very competitive, and that doesn't help me at all. I am the person, okay? Someone said this once, and I thought, oh, thank God, I thought it was just me, who secretly races people walking along the pavement.
Oh my God, I do that all the time.
Right? Right? Now, there are loads of people out there who are going, what?
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, I'll catch up with him. Oh, I'll overtake him. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I just like, it's so dumb. It really is quite dumb. But I still do it. I'm 50, what am I? 55. And I still do it, And so that doesn't help. So being an extrovert and being competitive is like, oh, darn, and it will, it can push you to a point of being a workaholic. It really can. I don't think I'm a workaholic. I genuinely don't. I think I just don't have enough help around me. And so in order to do the things I need to do, I have to work long hours to get them done. That's probably what every workaholic says, isn't it? But
I actually don't think so, because I think what I'm kind of hearing is the difference there is a purpose that is not, I need to do this because it's taking up my space. It's, I need to do this because there's a purpose outside of me. And what I'm also hearing is that if you did have that additional support and help, that you probably wouldn't be doing that, which is not what a workaholic would say.
No, I mean, I would gladly go back to a 4-day week. And before the bookshop, I just would not. I'd be like, I'm a 4-day week, right? I just want to, one day it will come. It will come. There might be a big investor listening right now who's like, yay, I want to make that happen.
I hope that for you so hard. I'm thinking about kind of in terms of like rest and taking care of yourself. And when I went to a book reading at your shop about a year ago, it was the author of Wahala, and you're going to have to help me out with her name.
Nikki May, that's
right. She said something about wanting to write a book about Black folks that didn't involve trauma, didn't involve slavery, didn't involve colonization. She just wanted a book where Black folks could just be Black folks and like live a normal life.
Yeah.
And I kind of hear that in what you're saying is just like, like rest, just be, just exist. And that's okay. And I think that one of the things you said to me one time when I came into your store is that you often see like Black folks come into your store and visibly relax.
Yeah.
Because Brighton, for people who don't know, is not particularly diverse when it comes to race, which I didn't know when I moved here. I moved from London, which is very diverse. And I knew that Brighton was like, everyone's a big hippie and it's like the LGBTQIA plus hub. Yeah. And I assumed that would naturally come with racial diversity. And I got here and I was like, oh my God, it's real white here. Yeah. And you said to me that when Black people come into your store, they visibly relax.
Yeah. I often describe it as Afrori Books as a place where your shoulders slump, because you just let go. My favorite story around this is that a man came into the bookshop and he came in, took maybe 3 steps into the bookshop and just stopped. And I said, hi, how are you? And he said, fine. But he didn't move. I just waited, it's fine. And then it's sort of 3 minutes later, he's still just standing. He hasn't moved. So I go over and I say, hi, are you okay? And he looked at me straight. I didn't know I was holding my breath.
Ooh.
And I had to turn away from him because I had tears in my eyes. And so since then, I describe it as this place where your shoulders slump. I've done this unofficial survey because, like most shops, we have a receipt printer and we have lots of till roll. And we always have lots of till roll because people very rarely ask us for a receipt. And the thing is about Black people is because of racism, because we're so often followed around shops, because we're so often accused of shoplifting and theft, we always keep the receipts. Like, always keep the receipts. And so now when I say to people who come into the shop, to Black people, oh, would you like a receipt? And they say, oh, no, thank you. I say, can I ask you something? And they go, yeah. I go, why didn't you ask me for a receipt? And they go, I didn't need to, did I? No. And every time a Black person says, no, thank you, I'm like, oh, I love this. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple way of demonstrating even white privilege, isn't it? Is that most white people wouldn't even think about it. If you think I might take it back, not because you think you might not get out of the shop door, you know, and just, yeah.
And I think that I send my therapy clients to your shop. I'm like, think about feeling alone and isolated and seen in the wrong way in Brighton. And I'm like, I got a place for you. And I think what you're doing is so important for the community, not just for Brighton, but for the country. And, you know, like, you don't know how far that'll extend, right? And I'm curious how you feel about the term healer as applied to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's complex, isn't it? You know, will always be linked back to my faith. But I think that, you know, healing's about restoration, isn't it? And restoring yourself. You can't restore yourself unless you feel safe. So we often describe the bookshop, the physical bookshop, as a safe space for Black people and their allies. Someone said once, oh, I love Afrori Books because everyone's welcome. I said, no, they're not. Actually, everyone's not welcome. If you're not an ally, you know, or even, you know, desiring to be one, you're probably not welcome. You know, we're not an open door to everybody because that's how we become a safe space. There are literally people that we've thrown out of the shop because of their behavioral comments. So I think when we think about healing, it's about where can my restoration begin? And it's only a beginning. It is really only a beginning. It's like, it could begin here. It can begin in a book. It can begin just in, hey, here's a space where they'll listen to my story. You know, here's a space even, you know, for white people. So the bookshop is designed for loud conversations. We don't play like chilled lift jazz music in the bookshop. On Saturdays, like, we play Afro beats. On Fridays, we play disco, because the bookshop is about my version, and it's only my version of Black culture. And, you know, I'm of Jamaican heritage. We're loud. Like, my family is loud. I'm loud, you know. And so actually the bookshop's quite a loud place. And if you come into the bookshop, you'll see that all our bookshelves are white because we want you to see the color of the books. And all the bookshelves in the middle of the store are designed to be the height that you can rest your elbow on and put your chin in your hand.
Wow.
And that's very specific. And that is because I want you to be able to have a conversation over a bookshelf. And so often what happens is, particularly on a Saturday, we'll have a group in, usually a group of Black people. This is so common. A group of Black people in, and they're having a conversation, and we're all in it, and we're all arguing or debating and just being generally loud. And 1, 2, 3 white people will be in, and they'll stand in, and I can see they're listening to the conversation. And so because of the design of the bookshelf, my elbow goes down, my fist goes on my chin. I'm doing this now, and your listeners can't hear me, but I'm demonstrating. And I'll say, what do you think? And the white person says, what? What, me? I'm like, yeah, I know you're listening. Come on, what do you think? Because I want you to be part of this conversation. I want you to hear and know that you need to be part of this conversation, because so much of what we said, frizzy hair, applies to you. You are impacted by racism. You know, we run anti-racist workshops in schools across Sussex, Brighton, South, really. The question is, who is affected by racism? And we always ask the question at the beginning of the workshop, and then we do some work, and then we ask it again at the end. And at the beginning of the workshop, the answer is Black people. And at the end of the workshop, the answer is everyone. So come into the bookshop and be a part of that conversation. You will learn more when you feel that you were part of that conversation rather than an observer. And as Black people, we've been observed for too long. And actually, you need to be in this and take some responsibility for this. And so, and I don't do it like, hey, go in this conversation to be responsible. I'm like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? And some of the questions are stupid. We might just be talking about some, I don't know, silly thing that we're debating about. Hey, what do you think? But even by joining you into the meaningless, seemingly conversations, the next time you come in and there's a conversation going, you'll feel like you've got permission to join in, to give an opinion. And you won't talk about just the book you bought. You'll talk about the place you were in. And that's really important for us because that says, hello, Black people are here, because it's so easy, particularly in Brighton, to forget that.
Yeah. Before I move on to the next question, I just want to repeat to any white people listening that racism does affect all of us. The way that racism impacts us is in, small things like hair, but also in what we're holding on to and what we then become afraid of. Are we afraid to join a conversation? The fear of other people. We lose out on so much connection when we build this otherness. And I just wanted to echo that. So my follow-up question and the last question I'll ask you is, how do you feel about the term wounded healer?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? It makes me think about what do we do out of damage? And can we restore when we're damaged? Can we restore when we're broken and when we're hurting? And I think that that's a complex answer because the answer is, of course, we can not. Yes, we can. Absolutely not. Because it's both, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think that I have not reached a place of perfection and healing. I've got some probably, if I was with a therapist, they would probably groan and be like, wow, there's some elusive trauma in there. I think the thing about healing is healing is like forgiveness in that it is an ongoing process. It is a process that if you do not embrace it, you become the only prisoner in a cell and you literally put yourself in solitary confinement. And so I think if you think to yourself, I am in this ongoing process, then there is space for me to bring others with me. If I'm stagnant, then I'm not going anywhere, so I can't take anyone anywhere. I think I heard someone once say, a friend of mine said, Carolynn, you're only elite if you look behind and someone's following you. Otherwise, you're just a weirdo wandering around ranting. And you're only a healer if you're on a journey. If you're on the journey, then I guess I want to say almost like less scrutiny. There's less emphasis on what your wounds are, if that makes sense. Because if you're standing still, okay, I say this a lot. So in our shop, if you say the term microaggressions, you will get an immediate correction from me. Because I consider it, and Black people are not a monolith, I consider it an unacceptable term. Okay, they're only micro to the aggressor. They're aggressions.
Yeah.
And so when I do anti-racist training, I say, imagine if you have a paper cut. If you get one paper cut on your finger, you go, oh, ouch, finger goes in your mouth. I don't know. Kids looked at me weird when I said that, but I suck the pain away, right?
Yeah.
And all my focus is on that. So that's micro. But what if I have 100 of those all over my body? Well, that's actually pretty close to death, and that's unbearable. And so if I have, and I'm saying this to connect to this, if I have a cut or a wound on me and I am stagnant and I'm not dealing with that wound, I'm not moving forward with it, what will happen to me is all of my focus is on my wound. All of my thoughts, everything I do is focused on that wound, that thing that's hurting me. I haven't actually noticed people around me who are saying, hey, let me help you with that. I haven't noticed the environment I've in has changed. So I might not even notice that I'm no longer in a dungeon and I'm now, in a hospital, let's just say, or in a place of healing. I haven't noticed all these things because all of my focus is on my wound. And when my focus is only on my wound, the only other thing my focus is on is who wounded me. So if I feel like I wounded myself, then I'm hating myself. If I feel that somebody else wounded me, I'm hating on them. But actually, if I'm making a decision to move forward, to move towards help, to move towards healing, to move towards restoration, then actually my focus shifts, doesn't it? And we talk about in the Christian faith, we talk about, how we lift our heads, that we're not focused on our feet, but we're looking upwards. For me, I'm looking up to God and just being like, okay, my focus is on you, God. And actually that changes how everything looks, And so the same for us is that even if you are not a person of faith, if you are looking downwards, you're seeing very little of life, the universe, of possibilities, of opportunities. You see very little. If you lift your head a little bit, let's say, kind of knee height, then you'll see movement, but you don't really understand where people are moving or what they're going or what they're doing. You go up to head height, you're understanding that people are moving and that there is possibility of movement. But what if you went further than that? What if someone takes you up in a hang glider and now you see future, you see possibilities, you see greater opportunities, you see that the forest has an end and that there's an oasis over there. You see all these other things. And so I think that, I'm saying all that to say you might hit each of those positions of your head and your height still with your wound. Your wound doesn't necessarily disappear.
That might be my favorite answer that anyone's ever given to that question. And I think so much of what you just said is going to sit in me for a long time. I felt it. It hit me right in my chest, that answer. And I know that that's going to bubble up in moments to come. And so I'm really appreciative of that. And thank you for your time in general. And just tell folks where they can find you.
You can find us online at afroribooks.co.uk. And you can find us in Brighton on North Road in the Bright Town Centre with a big,
you can't miss it,
shiny sign. No, you can't miss it.
Miss it. Carolynn, thank you so much for coming on the show, for doing everything you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to our guest for an amazing conversation today. To find out more about today's guest, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast.
You can find Sarah at headheartbiztherapy on Facebook and Instagram.
And you can find Anne at Spare Room Wellness or spareroomwellness.com.
Thanks as always to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, to Liam O'Donnell for the album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Until next time, bye-bye.